In the mid-18th century, in the heart of what is now Nigeria, a young boy named Olaudah Equiano lived a life of peace and freedom among his Igbo people. His days were filled with the rhythms of his village, the stories of his elders, and the warmth of his family. Yet this life was not destined to last. By the time he was 11, Equiano's world was shattered. He would endure one of the darkest experiences of human history, only to emerge as one of its brightest lights. A voice that would echo through the centuries, calling for justice and freedom. This is the story of Olaudah Equiano, African, slave, author, abolitionist. From freedom to bondage, Equiano's early years were rooted in his Igbo heritage. His family was prominent within their village, and Equiano enjoyed a childhood shaped by the traditions of his people. He later described his homeland as a place of music, ceremonies, and strong community bonds. But one day, while playing with his sister, the two were kidnapped by raiders. Their captors dragged them far from their home, and soon, Equiano found himself torn from his family forever. Sold into slavery, the boy was passed from trader to trader until he was transported to the African coast. Here, Equiano encountered something he could scarcely comprehend: a massive ship filled with screaming, chained men and women. This was his first glimpse of the transatlantic slave trade. Forced aboard the ship, he began the harrowing journey known as the Middle Passage. The hell of the Middle Passage. The conditions aboard the slave ship were beyond horrific. Equiano would later recall the stench of human suffering, the suffocating heat, and the cries of despair. Packed tightly into the hold, slaves were treated as little more than cargo. Disease, malnutrition, and abuse claimed countless lives before they ever reached the Americas. Yet Equiano survived. His journey across the Atlantic brought him to the Americas, where he was sold to Michael Pascal, a British naval officer. It was Pascal who gave him the name Gustavus Vassa, a name that Equiano detested but had no choice but to accept. For the next several years, Equiano served aboard Pascal's ship during the 7 Years' War, learning the ways of European maritime life and picking up the English language. A life of servitude. Pascal eventually sold Equiano to a merchant in the Caribbean, and the boy's life took a harsher turn. He labored under brutal conditions, performing back-breaking work alongside other enslaved people. But Equiano's sharp mind and adaptability set him apart. He gained skills in navigation, literacy, and trade, qualities that would later prove invaluable. Equiano began to dream of freedom. Every small task he completed, every deal he made on behalf of his owners, brought him closer to his ultimate goal. Finally, in 1766, after years of saving money earned through trading and small ventures, Equiano purchased his freedom for £40, a staggering sum for someone in his position. For most enslaved people, the story would have ended there. But Equiano's journey was far from over. In many ways, his true life's work was just beginning. Freedom and purpose. As a free man, Equiano continued to work as a sailor, traveling across the Atlantic and even venturing to the Arctic. But his experiences had left an indelible mark on him. Equiano had seen the worst of human cruelty, and he could not remain silent. Settling in England, Equiano became involved in the burgeoning abolitionist movement. He began speaking publicly about his life, sharing the horrors of slavery with audiences who had never before encountered such first-hand accounts. His eloquence and intelligence defied the racist stereotypes of the time, challenging the British public to confront the realities of the slave trade. The power of the pen. In 1789, Equiano published his autobiography, The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olaudah Equiano, or Gustavus Vassa, the African. The book was revolutionary. It detailed his life from his idyllic childhood in Africa, through the terror of enslavement, to his eventual freedom and activism. Equiano's narrative was more than just a personal story. It was a scathing indictment of the transatlantic slave trade. He described the brutality of the Middle Passage, the dehumanizing conditions of enslavement, and the resilience of those who endured. His vivid descriptions and moral appeals struck a chord with readers across Britain and the Americas. The book became a bestseller, reprinted multiple times during Equiano's lifetime. It was one of the first widely read works by a black author, and it played a crucial role in the abolitionist movement. Equiano's words gave a voice to millions of enslaved Africans who had been silenced. forcing the world to confront the human cost of slavery. Advocate for change, Equiano did not stop at writing. He was an active participant in the abolitionist movement, working alongside figures like Granville Sharp and Thomas Clarkson. He spoke at rallies, lobbied Parliament, and contributed to petitions against the slave trade. Equiano also advocated for the rights of freed slaves. He became involved in the Sierra Leone Resettlement Project, which aimed to establish a colony for freed Africans. Although the project faced many challenges, Equiano's efforts underscored his commitment to improving the lives of others. Legacy of a life lived with purpose. Olaudah Equiano passed away in 1797, just a decade before the British slave trade was officially abolished in 1807. While he did not live to see the full fruits of his labor, his influence on the abolitionist movement was undeniable. Equiano's narrative remains one of the most important accounts of slavery in history. It provides an unflinching look at the horrors of the slave trade, while also celebrating the resilience and humanity of those who endured it. His story is not just a chronicle of suffering, it is a testament to the power of perseverance, education, and advocacy. Why Equiano's story matters. Olaudah Equiano's life bridges the gap between the distant past and the present. His journey from freedom to enslavement and back to freedom reflects the enduring struggle for human dignity. His work reminds us the power of storytelling. Equiano's narrative transformed abstract debates about slavery into visceral, human realities. The importance of advocacy. Equiano's activism shows that change is possible when individuals refuse to remain silent. The strength of resilience. Despite unimaginable hardship, Equiano used his experiences to fight for justice. An enduring voice today, Olaudah Equiano's words continue to resonate. His autobiography is studied in classrooms, celebrated in historical circles, and honored in the ongoing fight for equality. Equiano was more than a survivor, he was a changemaker. His life stands as a reminder that even in the face of the darkest oppression, the human spirit can shine brightly, leaving a legacy that shapes the world for generations to come. From Africa to the Americas, from enslavement to freedom, Equiano's journey remains one of history's most inspiring tales. A story of a man who turned the chains of bondage into the tools of liberation.